Hello everybody. The last video I did, I mentioned my cousin that marched with Martin Luther King, who was Italian, who was considered half black. He was gay. He was marching with Martin Luther King. And he started the Human Rights Campaign. He was one of the people who started the Human Rights Campaign. Big wig with politicians. He actually knows a lot of famous people in Hollywood too. And I mentioned the Jussie Smollett case, which turned out to be a hoax. You know what? And I never connected the two. I just started talking about, I started with, it was the one about labels. I started talking about labels because he's the one who said, we will have achieved our goal when the world enters an age when we don't label people, you know, black, white, gay, but now it's all about labels. And so it is with the women's rights. You know, that used to be about equality. Everything used to be about equality, but now even in the women's movement, it's about labels. Interesting. But the most interesting thing is that Jussie Smollett was an actor and put on a hoax about he's half black. He's half black, right? He's gay. And he said that two MAGA hat wearers tried to lynch him and threw bleach on him. And the interesting part that I didn't even connect, I just started talking, telling you the story, and the Jussie Smollett thing just happened to be in the news. And so I mentioned it. And now I realize my own cousin, what really happened to him was his poster was put up all over the South saying, if you find this man, lynch him. And he was considered half black, being Italian, just like Jussie Smollett. He was gay, like Jussie Smollett. And he was fighting for civil rights. And Jussie Smollett is a social justice warrior. But in Jussie Smollett's case, I don't know what he's fighting for. He perpetrated a hoax. He's an actor. He doesn't seem to be sincere about anything. He just wants to jump on the popular bandwagon of Hollywood. But it's interesting. I told you a true story about lynching a gay half-black man who was actually marching with Martin Luther King. And then Jussie Smollett kind of puts reality to shame, didn't he? That's really kind of interesting. I just am mentioning that. That's if you want to check out that video about labels. It's a pretty good one. Get to the end. It's actually pretty good. Anyway, I mentioned Kamala Harris in the video about Jussie Smollett. And Kamala Harris was talking about this whole anti-lynching law. And she wants to bring back, or she wants to enact reparations, which is going to be impossible. So anybody that's white, even people who came over here, had nothing to do with a plantation owner, slave trader, not a Democrat, immigrated here long after that, poor people who were considered black because they were Italian. My other half of my family has got Egyptian in them. So who are you going to get these reparations from? But you see, the funny thing about it with Kamala Harris, Kamala Boom Dee Ay Harris, she's really pissed her father off because she was talking about her Jamaican side. She's part Indian from India. As I understand it, the Indians in Jamaica don't mix. They remain as a group and they keep their culture and they dress like they're in India. Her father, who's a professor, got really pissed because she said that she sat at home and smoked weed. And she's painting all Jamaicans as reggae, Rastafarians, and not all Jamaicans are like that. In fact, I do know some Jamaicans that are not like that at all whatsoever. So he came out against her on that one. But the really interesting part, and if you haven't heard about this, about the Kamala Harris story, why this whole reparations thing, okay, there's more than one reason why the Democrats are all jumping on the bandwagon, including Elizabeth Granny Warren, who said that she was Native American, 1024th, and it was checked with, was it Peruvians, Mexicans, and Ecuadorians or Brazilians, which is interesting. So if her genetics match 1124th, that small percentage matches any of those groups down there. Do you know that all the groups that were mentioned are all mixed people? If you take the DNA from any of these people, the DNA is mixed. You'll have some native people who are not necessarily related to the people in the Americas, but they're mixed with Spanish. And the genetics of Spain, if you look on a map about genealogy, Spain's genetics is more closely related to Britain and the upper part of Europe into Germany, which is interesting. So they're even more white. Spanish people are actually more white than if you were talking about Southern Europe, or really Southern Europe, like Greece and Italy are much more Southern. Greece and Southern Italians are more related to Middle Eastern people than they are British people. Actually, they're not really related at all. I'm talking about the Southern Italians. So why is it that they're coming out? Of course, Elizabeth Warren, who, wow, from a long time ago, has been lying and saying that she's Native American, and that the two sides of her family didn't want to come together for the wedding, but they actually did. Their parents got married out of town, and then they all got together at the reception and had a big square dance. So she knows both sides of her family, and she knows both sides of her family are not Native American. And the relative that supposedly was Native American was married to a guy in Oklahoma who belonged to a militia that went out to hunt down, round up, and kill Cherokee. So he's the one who married the Cherokee. Her story is so bogus. So she's jumping on the reparations train. A woman who lied to get her jobs and to used Native American privilege to get her job at Harvard. So if she checked the box and used white privilege, she wouldn't have gotten the job at Harvard if she checked the box as white. So if you check the box as being non-white, then you actually have privilege. It's kind of interesting. Thought that some people don't really realize that the privilege is actually on the different end of the spectrum here. But she's for reparations. They all have to be for reparations. Why is it? Because African Americans, the people who are descendants of slaves, I'm talking about the Africans that moved over here later from Africa who've been immigrating to America, I'm talking about the people who are descendants of slaves. They're losing their vote in droves. Why? Because the Democrat Party puts the people who are coming over the border illegally before everything. That comes first. Their vote comes first. Because yes, they are voting motor voter law, and I've told you a million times how you can register as an illegal alien in California, because there are 4 pages, 4 different types of IDs, and if you don't have any, you just put down an address. Said this a million times, don't want to repeat myself. But yes, that whole state, 43% of the state is on the dole, and it's bankrupt. That's why people are leaving it. And that's why other states are turning purple, because Democrats are leaving California, because the taxes are so high and they can't afford to live because it is Democrat run. Anything that's Democrat run, the taxes are really high. So what do? They go to other states and they vote in Democrats. And so they're going to eventually get the same thing in all states and then have a president that's Democrat, or actually a president that's socialist, because you guys are moving in that direction. So I suggest anybody moving out of these states because the taxes are so oppressive, I would suggest voting for a different party, because you're going to make the whole country highly taxed and you're going to make the whole country socialist. So the Democrats have realized that they're losing the African American vote. So what are they going to do? Reparations, which is an impossible thing. You have to prove also you are a descendant of slaves, right? You would have to prove that. And the money you're taking from people who are not black, you have to prove that they are related to slave owners. And you see, here's the even funnier part about Kamala Harris, who wants to put up an anti-lynching law, which is really kind of funny. Because if you let that cat out of the bag to all the people who murder people, mass murderers, anybody commits a murder. Oh, ma'am, yes, really? You found your son hanging there, your husband hanging there? He was hanging there. So you're saying he's lynched. Well, in our country, that doesn't count as murder. Anybody who's lynched doesn't count as murder. See, I didn't realize that lynching wasn't considered murder, and lynching needs to be against the law. I thought that was a form of murder if you lynched somebody, and that if you tell the cops that somebody's hanging there and was lynched, that they're going to hang up the phone because that's not really murder. And Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor and remember she was a mistress and she got 2 promotions because she was sleeping with a married man. And she also put out a law which really hurt minorities really bad, because she said that the parents would go to jail if the kids played truant. So the kids didn't show up in school, she would arrest the parents, which were mostly minorities. It really hurt minorities. Even if the parent brings the child to the school, they walk in the front door and they walk out the back door. There's nobody that keeps the kids in the school. It's not the parents' fault, even if they bring the kids. Okay, there's another strike we have against minorities that she's done, and she's got 2 promotions by a married man. And what's the other thing? Oh, yes, her father said, and this is true, and you can find this on the net, her relatives were plantation owners. Her family were slave owners. She was not a descendant of slaves. She is a descendant of slave owners. So that's why she wants reparations, and the anti-lynching, because she's trying to show people. Remember when she was dancing? She was dancing really horribly. She's trying to show that she had the groove. Well, she has no groove, because she's the blood of slave owners, and she's part Indian. So that's why she's doing the whole reparations thing. For the Democrats to get the black. See, the black people are leaving in droves the Democrat Party, because they realize you're giving anybody who walks over that border is getting 100% on the dole free and can work under the table. Yet we've been living in this country and came over in chains, and you destroyed our cities, gave us welfare, and kicked the father out of the home, and destroyed our school system. You destroyed a people, and it was the Democrats that ran all these cities and are running all these cities into the ground right now. Well, they're waking up to this. As you're giving these people, you're kissing their feet and giving them anything just for walking over the border, and they don't have to do anything, plus they get paid under the table, and they're sending $120 billion back home. They're getting a lot of money. That estimate is as of a few years ago, and millions of more have crossed the border since, so that amount should be higher by now. So the Democrats are leaving the party. So now the Democrats are saying, the black people leaving the party. So the Democrats want to pay the black people for their vote. They're paying them for their vote. Vote for us because we've done so right by you, by being the party of slave traders, slave owners, KKK, and Jim Crow South, and the Democrats North and South wanted to keep slavery. The Civil War was fought to keep the Union together. It was actually about 3 years into it did they decide to free the slaves after the Civil War. It was actually to keep the Union together, and nobody in the South voted for Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said he would do anything to keep the Union together. South wanted to secede, and slavery was going out of fashion because the cotton gin was invented and industrialization. So slavery was going to peter out, would peter out eventually. Not saying they shouldn't have been freed, but I'm saying that the South would have to rely on a different means to get money than the plantations. But that's interesting. So her ancestors were plantation owners. And she wants to have an anti-lynching bill because lynching apparently isn't murder. And she wants to pay blacks to stay in the Democratic Party. Democratic Party will do absolutely anything to keep a voting bloc and paying them. They're paying people who are coming over the border, they're paying them for their vote, and now they're losing the descendants of slaves who are waking up, and now they want to pay them. Well, you know what? Every Democrat who wants an open border, listen to this now, every Democrat who wants an open border, and every Democrat who is since you're a Democrat, you're the ones who should pay reparations. And number two, since you want open borders, every single person, and these politicians are really wealthy, and they got these big high walls around their houses, and they employ people for a quarter of the wage because they want cheap labor. They want a permanent slave class. Since they don't have the African Americans as slaves anymore, they are importing a permanent slave class that they can pay under the table, and they can get the people, the taxpayers, raise their taxes to give these people money so they can live for free on the dole. They don't have to pay it, but they get exorbitant paychecks because they vote themselves pay raises. So this is why the Democrats want this. They want their slaves back, don't they? They want their slaves coming in from south of the border, and they want to pay the people who used to be slaves to keep voting them into office so they have all power. So they can control this country with one-party rule, change it to socialist, and so they're at the top, we're at the bottom. This is what they're doing. And Kamala Harris has too many, well, we thought Hillary had too many skeletons in her closet, too. But Kamala Harris is coming out, basically, has got a lot of bad stuff in her closet. You know what? it didn't really hurt Hillary that much, really. Somehow Trump won. I think he won by a landslide. I think that's the reason why he won. So how much is it going to hurt Kamala Harris? Kamala Harris? How much is it going to hurt her? Knowing all this and pretending, playing a game. I say, wake up, people. Wake up. They're losing a voting bloc, so they're paying for the vote. And they're paying for the vote that's coming over the border because they're importing a new slave class. Very good. Excellent. Thank you for joining me today. You've learned an awful lot. See you again soon. Bye-bye.